A warm and friendly hello. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Seats with myself, Greg Hughes Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast on tap for you guys. Joining me in segment number 2, it is Mike Randle. He does tremendous work over at FTN Network. Along with that, taking a look at just everything basketball related over at The Screener podcast. I know he does some tremendous work with regards to the football side of things in terms of college basketball as well. And we're going to be taking a look at what we've all got on a wonderful Thanksgiving Thursday. And I'd be remiss not to wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully you're spending it with good food, family members. Maybe you're having a Friendsgiving. Hopefully you're not having Festivus quite yet. That might be a little bit soon, but you know what? If you are, who cares? I mean, it's the holiday season. We should all be merry, and hopefully we can make you guys a little bit of money today, as in the final segment I give you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thanksgiving Thursday as we hit some bank shots. If you've got a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast by that 5-star review. Really did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a really good day of college basketball on Wednesday. And finally, I've got enough time to be able to recap some of these results as well, as we've had some very harebrained days in general of hoops. It is a very, very busy time of year where we don't know these matchups until like hours before they actually happen, with basketball going from like 11 a.m. until past midnight if you're out there on the East Coast. So it is a great time of year. But let's take a look back at everything that we did get on Wednesday, try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Out in Maui, we saw a pair of just big giant clashes, with Kansas being able to get it done against Tennessee by kind of 69-60. And as some things change, some things stay the same, and it feels like it's that way for Tennessee. Tennessee just unable to put the ball in the basket in general. They go 9 of 33 from three-point range. Dalton Knecht, he did a solid job in this one, being able to give the team 13 points. So it's on 17 shots. And Santiago Vescovi, he chips in there 21. Past that, nobody else was really able to give you a whole heck of a lot for the Tennessee team. And how about Hunter Dickinson? 20 boards, 17 points. Now, Kansas, they've got some question marks with more of their ancillary pieces as well. Johnny Furphy, a relatively pedestrian performance. Marco Jackson, want to see a little bit more out of him. Just 13 minutes, and he's not been able to deliver too much for the team. But Kevin McCullough, despite the 7 turnovers, which he needs to clean up, he still was able to give out a trio of assists. You had DeJuan Harris have 3 turnovers, but 8 assists as well. Very much a defense-oriented battle. And in Maui, we saw a whole bunch of unders as well. You always want to be mindful of the actual environment in terms of gauging these totals, because I always noticed that at Lahaina, the rims were very, very friendly. Not so much at the Sand Sheriff Center, though this game did go over, and you saw Marquette give a good effort against Purdue, especially in the second half, but they fall just short. 78-75. Purdue was able to get it done. Giant of the Earth, Zach Edey, was able to lead his team to victory. Now, Marquette did a solid job of forcing him into some turnovers. He did have 5 turnovers, but 28 points, 15 boards. Very impressive for a Purdue team that, you had your question marks a little bit with this backcourt, but they've been able to answer a lot of those for this Purdue team. They have really been just going through these opponents left and right. This was a game where the number was right around 3, a lot of places on flows. If you got lucky, you might have actually been able to get a straight 2 to a 2.5. I think that the South Point was dishing out a 2 out here in lovely Las Vegas, so you're able to get some good numbers there. But for Marquette, game opponent here, as they were able to do a nice job dishing the ball inside as well. Marquette, known as a little bit more of a 3-point shooting team, they go just 5 of 17 from 3-point range, but Tyler Kolek, 22 points, 7 boards, 6 assists. Flip side for Purdue, you had a Braden Smith step up, and he's really been the guy to take that freshman to sophomore leap. 18 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, goes 4 of 6 from 3-point range. And then Lance Jones, who's always a little bit questionable with his 3-point shooting, he was able to go 3 of 7 from the outside as well. So Purdue, they win the Maui Invitational. I am unsure of how the 7th place game went as I do this, so I'm not sure what to give you in terms of Syracuse versus Chaminade, but what I could also say is that Virginia had a big giant sweat against West Virginia, but they just barely are able to edge it out. This was a final of 56-54 as This was very much a nip and tuck game for Virginia, but they're able to persevere, even though West Virginia was able to get another nice performance out of Jesse Edwards. Jesse Edwards, right now playing without Kirk Risa, you can tell that he could certainly use a little bit of help, but he was able to deliver 17 points, 9 boards, and Quinn Slesniski has been a nice find for the team as well. He's come in from Iona, 17 points, 5 boards in this one as well, but for Virginia, hero in this game, how about Mr. Geeter Dunn, Ryan Dunn, 13 points, pair of steals, 5 rebounds. Virginia, rough three-point shooting day. They go just 4 of 18 from three-point range, but they win that turnover battle by a count of 16-9. That allows them to be able to get to the window on this one. And then with regards to Wisconsin versus SMU game, as I do this show, as I have the Greg Peterson Experience coming up at midnight Eastern time until 3 a.m., and if you're out there on the West Coast, that is 9 to midnight Pacific time. I do need to do this in a little bit in advance. Shock, surprise, surprise. We've got about 13 minutes left in the second half, and Wisconsin has 30 points up on the board. They're currently losing to SMU by a count of 40-30. Just same old Wisconsin basketball time and time again. It's like, where have I seen this movie before? Oh, wait. Every single season of Wisconsin basketball. So we are seeing much of the same, and unfortunately for me, it's been much of the same. A lot of just bad picks with regards to my DK Network write-up picks. I have gone cold with these, and I'm going to look to get back on track. I do apologize, as I wrote up Michigan on the money line for this one, and Michigan, they were able to give a good effort in the second half, but they do fall short, 71-67. Memphis is able to get it done, as the big differential in this one was the turnovers. 18 turnovers for Michigan. Meanwhile, Memphis, they committed just 11. You did have Michigan have a solid performance out of Olivier Kama, 18 points, 7 boards, and then you were able to get 12 big rebounds as well out of Terrace Reed. I like his overall game for this Michigan team. Navari Burnett was able to chip in there 16 points, but yeah, between Reed, Terrence Williams, Olivier Kamwa, a combined 10 turnovers. That proved to be very costly. And for Memphis, you had off the bench a very unexpected 5 of 7 3-point shooting day from Ashton Hardaway, who I believe that he came into this game with a career 2 points. So he absolutely explodes, and then explodes by money line play on Michigan. So that was a little bit less than terrific, and after it looked like Michigan was just absolutely lighting the world on fire and that they were one of the top teams in all of college basketball, they have now lost back-to-back games, with the loss against Long Beach State obviously being a little bit more concerning than this one. I'm doing this as this game is still going on, but as of right now, unless if we see one of the biggest comebacks in the history of college basketball, this is going to be another W for the Dukes. How about James Madison? As I do this show, they are up by 26 points in the second half against Fresno State. The approximate score is 58-32 for James Madison. They're not even doing it in this game with necessarily their three-point shooting. They've just been able to be much more efficient with the ball. Right now, they're winning the turnover battle by a count of 12-5. Fresno State is currently 0 of 9 from three-point range, and James Madison has just been able to completely shut them down in all aspects of basketball. Meanwhile, as I do this, 6 different guys have reached at least 8 points right now for James Madison. They've got so much depth. They've got so much ability. Have to love what you're seeing out of the Dukes right now, and you gotta love sometimes a little bit of a slog. As I do this, we've got Arkansas and Stanford coming down to the bitter end with about 3 minutes remaining in the battle for Atlantis. And one of the betting angles I truly do take a look at with regards to these tournaments is the overall environment, the shooter's eye, what we've seen in the past from the rims. And the rims in the battle for Atlantis, they are always as hard as a rock. I have no idea how, I have no idea why, but nothing goes down. And right now we've got a 54-51 slog between Arkansas and Stanford with about 3 minutes remaining, as both teams as well, they have really slowed down their play. So I do have to give a little bit of a note there, as Stanford has actually went 7 of 18 from three-point range in this affair, but certainly it feels like the battle for Atlantis is a big giant haven of unders, as right now you've got Arkansas shooting about 30% from the floor, but they have completely dominated on the glass by a count of 38-30. But with this Arkansas team, they've got a lot of inconsistent shooting as well, so we shall see how this one turns out. But currently Stanford looking to be able to get a big giant win to be able to bolster their confidence in general, and this is a team that needs no bolstering of confidence because this team is firing all cylinders, and they look like one of the best teams in all of college basketball. That'd be Creighton. They absolutely house Loyola of Chicago by a count of 88-65, and for Creighton. They didn't necessarily go as deep into their bench in this one, but they have been showing throughout the season that they are very willing to do so. Fran Farabello was the main guy that came out off the bench for 31 minutes, but that starting five was just tremendous. Ryan Kalkbrenner, 29 points, 5 boards. Baylor Shireman, a double-double, 24 points, 12 rebounds. Creighton goes 14 of 27 from three-point range, and Loyola Chicago, they were down Philip Alston in this game. They actually go 6 of 15 from three-point range. They were able to cut down on the turnovers. They only turned it over 10 times in this one, but still they are unable to cover that number of 19. Creighton has just been going through teams like a hot knife through butter. So that has been one of the more impressive teams to be able to gauge right now. And if you're looking at top overall ATS record thus far this season, your top team against the spread thus far this season has actually been the Oakland Grizzlies. They are 6-0 against the spread. Prairie View also 5-0 against the spread. But another team that came into Wednesday with a really good against the spread record entering into everything that we saw on Wednesday, that would be High Point. And High Point, they were not a low point when it came to the day on Wednesday, as High Point, they fall by kind of 97-94 against Hofstra. Most places close this number at 5.5. Now, if you were able to get in early, I think that you could have gotten a cash with Hofstra. I was seeing some 4 and 4.5s out there, so this is always one of those games where you're not necessarily handicapping the team, but you've got to be taking the best number in general. It is always so paramount, as this was an opener of right around 5 to 5.5 in a lot of spots. It dipped in some places. I know that this number actually did peak in quite a few places as well, right around a 6. So especially if you were able to get a 6, you were able to get in there on High Point. But for High Point, another relatively solid performance out of them. Abdoulaye Thiam, he was able to be a big-time contributor for the team with 15 points, but it was all about Mr. Miles going 13 of 18 from the floor. The Duke Miles, 32 points, kept High Point very much alive in this one, and Hofstra is a team that I'm very impressed by as well. Went 25 of 30 at the free throw line, despite the fact that the game went to overtime. They had just signed turnovers now. Hofstra is always going to have its problems on the glass. They lost that battle by a count of 50-38, but a really good battle between two mid-major teams that have been able to make you some money this season, and for this Hofstra bunch, my goodness gracious, they have been one of the best against the spread teams in all of college basketball, covering north of 58% of spreads over the last 5 seasons as well. So that was very much a fun one. And if you're just taking a look at other oddities and other stray results in college basketball, North Carolina looked very impressive against Northern Iowa in the Bad Boys Battle for Atlantis, 91-69 the final. We're certainly going to be talking about the Battle for Atlantis with Mike Randle in the next segment, and this was a game that was actually very tight. For Northern Iowa, they had things tied up early on in the second half, and then North Carolina, they pull away. For North Carolina, Armando Bacot, he had 10 points, 8 boards, 3 blocks. He was able to be a man amongst boys down low, but it was really Harrison Ingram that was able to take off in this one. 16 points, 10 boards for North Carolina. 12 of 26 from three-point range. This is a bunch that is known to be a little bit inconsistent from the outside. They certainly were a season ago, but a very good showing there from North Carolina, and also a very good showing if you're a fan of the Villanova Wildcats. They absolutely housed Texas Tech. This one by a count of 85-69 for Texas Tech. They actually go 14 of 36 from three-point range, which makes this all the more impressive from Villanova, as they were able to do an impressive job of being able to just control the game. Eric Dixon, 19 points, 6 boards for Villanova. They did force Texas Tech into 15 turnovers, and for Texas Tech, uncharacteristically, they got sped up in this game as Grant McCaslin comes over from North Texas, where they played at the slowest pace in all of college basketball. Warren Washington, he was able to give the team 8 rebounds and 4 blocks, but relatively pedestrian on the offensive side of things. And for Dixon, who had 19 points for Villanova, he had been a little bit rough to begin the season. He was able to ascend here, and then these teams laying big numbers, they just continue to cover. We saw that with Kansas State all over Central Arkansas by a count of 156, as Kansas State goes 10 of 29 from three-point range. Central Arkansas, they're only able to go 8 of 33 from three-point range. In Central Arkansas, without Cameron Hunter in the fold, they certainly are looking like a little bit of a shell of themselves. Meanwhile, for this Kansas State team, Arthur Kaluma led the way with 20 points. Just an absolute pulverizing for Baylor. They were laying in this game against Oregon State, 17.5, unable to quite get there, but they do get a pretty impressive win, 88-72, as Jacoby Walter, he was able to do a nice job being able to put in their 24 points for Baylor. Overall, they shoot from three-point range, 7 of 18, while Oregon State 4 of 15, and it looks like it's going to be another very long year for the Beavers, and this is a live number that reached 40.5 in this game. Georgia Tech was down 8 at the half against Cincinnati, and then Cincinnati, I believe that they went on a 40-7 run to begin the second half. They win by a count of 89-54. As for Cincinnati, talk about a masterclass. 14 of 35 from three-point range for Georgia Tech. 19 turnovers to 17 made field goals. I have to wonder what Cincinnati is going to be moving forward with Aziz Bendango now eligible. He got his two-time waiver now cleared by the NCAA. That is big for them. Jamiel Reynolds, we're going to be needing to see what we get out of him moving forward, if we're able to get anything out of him moving forward, as he was not cleared quite yet by the NCAA. But for Cincinnati, just an absolutely tremendous showing out of them. And then we did see another nice win from Princeton, 76-56. They were all over Old Dominion in this one, and Princeton, they are now 5-0. They have been able to knock off Old Dominion, Hofstra, Duquesne, Rutgers, and Monmouth, all away from home. And aside from the game against Duquesne, all by at least 7 points. This has been so impressive by what we've seen out of Princeton after they made the Sweet 16 a season ago. We thought without Tucson and Wildman that they would take a step back. Well, they have not. They went 13 out of 33 from three-point range. Absolutely lit it up there. As for Princeton, you're able to get 19 points out of Xavion Lee, and for Old Dominion, they actually go 9 of 18 from three-point range. Problem was, inside the arc, they weren't able to do a whole heck of a lot. They went 11 out of 37 from inside the arc. So Princeton just absolutely doing it down low, and from the outside, they just continue to be snipers as well. And then you did see Ole Miss be able to pull it out against Temple by a count of 77-76. And in terms of the harebrained game of the day, double overtime was needed between UT Martin and North Alabama, with UT Martin laying 2.5, just barely not able to get there. You probably had some different numbers depending upon when you took this, but 105-103 the final, as North Alabama went 15 of 37 from three-point range, 11 of 24 for UT Martin, with Jordan Sears being able to pack in their 34 points and 18 points, 18 rebounds out of Issa Mohammed. So looks like UT Martin is going to be playing some very up-tempo and some very rambunctious games, and it has been rambunctious what we've been seeing in college basketball thus far this season. The overs seem to be cooling off just a little bit, but the favorites, I was alluding to some of those big favorites here in the last few minutes that have been able to cover, they just continue to be hitting like wildfire. Favorites overall this college basketball season heading at a 52.1% clip, 407, 374, and 14 against the spread, and overs still hitting at 51%. 401 overs to 386 unders. In terms of pushes, I think that you've had now 8 in total, and if you're taking a look at home teams, they're pretty much out 50-50. 392, 389, and 14 against the spread. And if you're looking at the last 7 days in college basketball, home teams hitting at just 47.5% against the spread, while unders over the last 7 days have hit at about a 51.2% clip. Unders are at 187 and 178 over the last 7 days. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on a tremendous Wednesday. Now let's take a look forward to everything that we're going to be getting on this Thanksgiving Thursday. Hopefully you are spending it with you and yours, and I know that Mike Randle is going to be. He does tremendous work over at FTN Network and FTN Bets. He's going to be joining me breaking down some games and just how he's handicapping these tournaments next, right here on Cubs Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast.
Sports Betting Innovative Analytics has taken the guesswork and emotion out of sports betting to bring you an innovative and trustworthy resource to enhance your journey to becoming a winning player. With industry-leading money-back guarantee options backed by their sophisticated modeling, they want to introduce you to a system that's not widely seen or available to help you beat the bookmaker. Specializing in NBA, college basketball, and WNBA, your first week is always free. Get started at SBIA1.com today.
We're back to lovely Las Vegas with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and it is always great to be joined by this man, as Mike Randle is doing absolutely tremendous work over at FTN Network as one of their main content officers, obviously doing great work over at FTN Bets, and he also does his own great college basketball podcast called the Screener Podcast. You're able to find that wherever you find your podcast. To be able to find Mike on Twitter /X, that is over at Randall Rant altogether. And Mike, it is always great to have you aboard, and a happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. Thank you.
It's great to talk to you. It's Feast Week. We have so many great things going on. Games early in the morning, late at night. I mean, it's just constant college basketball.
Oh, it is exactly what we're looking for. And in terms of gauging these tournaments, how big of a struggle has it been for you? Because I do think that when it comes to a lot of these tournaments, there's a lot of great angles to be had, but at the same time, there's a lot of unpredictability when it comes to these tournaments where it's win to be able to go on to like the first, second place game the next day, and you just don't know who the opponent is going to be sometimes until hours before the matchup.
Yeah, I've been very hesitant, Greg, to lay large spreads with some of the major teams. That's been an area that I've tried to avoid, have been locked into like a Utah State against Stephen F. Austin. That is not the match for Stephen F. Austin. Richmond against UNLV getting 2 points. That was a great result. But I've struggled with some of the larger teams getting big spreads because it's so unpredictable. Like you said, these are neutral court environments. Players get hot. I mean, even right now, we saw Virginia not cover the first half line in their matchup with West Virginia without Kirk Kriisa, which makes no sense. So sticking mostly to the smaller schools, to the mid-majors, the ones that we love, that we really focus on, because I think we're getting value there, like a Sacred Heart, for example.
Yep, absolutely. I do think that there's great value there. And how much do you want to take a look at teams with a distinct style? Because I know one of the schools that you mentioned was Stephen F. Austin. They were a team that I bet quite heavily this week. A team like a Tarleton State that forces a lot of pressure. They're a team that I like as well. I wish his team was in a tournament because Merrimack is always one of those teams I think is a funky matchup as well. And I think that there's great value to be had in taking a look at these teams that they just play an unfamiliar style.
Unfamiliar styles is the way to go. Greg Campy out in Oakland does an amazing job, and that's a contrast in styles with Marshall. That's going to frustrate Marshall to no end. So, yeah, looking at those specific examples, Appalachian State, I love UNC Wilmington, but Appalachian State just took advantage there. They got up early, and when they get up, they don't give that lead away. So, yeah, isolating those styles where there are contrasts, where there's going to be an advantage. Don't worry about the record. Worry about the style and whether it can frustrate their opponent. And that's what we've seen, because some of these teams we really do know, can take advantage.
Absolutely. As Mike Randle, who does tremendous work over at FTN Network, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I do think that we've got a lot of interesting tournaments as well. And how much do you stick stock into the venue that it's being played as well? Because like with the Maui Invitational that just went final, that's one where I did have to shade down my totals a little bit from the normal Maui Invitational because, as we know, when it's played in Lahaina, you always get those friendly rims, and hopefully things will be back next year because those are very good people out there in Maui. But that's always the betting angle that I took a look at. And like a tournament that we've got going on Thursday in the Battle for Atlantis, I always like to take unders in that tournament because I just noticed in watching all those games, it feels like they've got the tightest rims on the face of planet Earth for that tournament.
Yeah, it was interesting when Marquette ended up playing Kansas. I had the under in that game. I had the first half under. I had the full game under as well. And they started off scalding hot, and it was up and down. But we just thought the rims were going to get tighter. These are two good defensive teams. It's going to be a close game, and it's going to trend to the under. But it was amazing. I think I put out that they had 8 points in the first 3.5 minutes, and then they ended up with 28 points or less than that at the half. So it really did slow down. Cam Jones was on fire, but sure enough, I think the tight rims, when you have two really good teams and there's a championship on the line, I think they're going to be careful.
Yep, absolutely. And I always think that is a good betting advantage to be able to take a look at it. What else I think is very interesting is I was referring to the Battle for Atlantis, and this team is one that I believe we talked about a little bit in the offseason. Unfortunately, we don't have any numbers for this game, but we are going to be seeing to lead off a nice Thanksgiving Thursday, Texas Tech versus Northern Iowa. And personally, I think that if we get to double figures, that's going to be a little bit too far on Texas Tech, but I do like the way that Texas Tech has been playing. Certainly Villanova was able to get hot yesterday, so that was not Texas Tech's best showing. But what do you make out of this matchup? Because I do take a look at Northern Iowa, and I just don't think that they're able to D up very well with the Texas Tech team that clearly has a size advantage with Warren Washington down low.
Yeah, they do. They do have the size advantage. I like Northern Iowa. They really had that game under control, but they gave up the threes, and once they get down big, they're going to be in trouble. Texas Tech, with Villanova, they kept it close, but they could not contain the offensive firepower. I think Northern Iowa plays into the hands of Texas Tech. This is the style they want to play. They're only shooting 27% from three-point range, so they're struggling, but the defense of Grant McCaslin, as good as it's ever been, as it was down with the Mean Green in North Texas. So Northern Iowa takes advantage of a contrast in styles and was able able to get up early and get a first half lead on North Carolina, but then sure enough, 34-6 in the second 10 minutes there, first 10 minutes of the second half. That's not going to happen here. I think they like the slowdown game, and I think Texas Tech is the play here against Northern Iowa.
Yep, I'm thinking so as well. Again, if we get to double figures, then I think we've gotten to a little bit of a point of no return. But as long as we can keep a nice single-figure number, I do think that there is going to be some value there, as there's always value in getting this man aboard. Mike Randle, he does great work over at FTM Bets, and he's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I know you talked up this team quite a bit in the offseason in Florida Atlantic, and they're coming off of a rough loss against Bryant, no question about it. But as we know in college basketball, all these teams go through rough shooting nights. And how much of this with Florida Atlantic, with them being a 5-point favorite, do you want to take a look at as perhaps a little bit of a buy low opportunity coming off of a spot where I don't know if they're going to shoot that cold the rest of the season, because that was just a very, very rough situation for them. And I do think that there's a good chance that they bounce back in this one.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think 5 points is enough here. I believe in Florida Atlantic. It was a bad performance. Sometimes, Greg, we've seen with the narratives, a new coach, Grasso is gone, new coach comes in, caution to the wind, weird things happen. I think they bounce back here. I believe in this team. This is a team that won by 43 points against Eastern Michigan. They beat Loyola Chicago in a semi-away game, which was essentially a road game in Chicago pretty comfortably. I believe in them. They have Liberty coming up, which is going to be a big battle, but I think they get this one done. I like them on the first half line. I like them full game as well. Thad Matta doing a nice job there with Butler, and they were able to keep it close for a while with Michigan State, but I think Florida Atlantic, seniors, good three-point shooting. They are not great, shooting 5 of 30 from three-point range again, so I have no problem backing them here, even with the slight, about 5 point on neutral court.
Yep, absolutely. I'm right there with you. I do take a look at Florida Atlantic, and I wouldn't want to go really past like 6 in this spot, but I do think that 5 is a little bit short. If they don't lose that game to Bryant, you're probably getting a little bit more of a 6. So I do think that we're getting a nice little discount there. And then I take a look at teams that have come out of the gate very hot, and some of this is for real. Some of this might not be so much for real, but I really like what I've seen out of Iowa State. The game that is going to be following for Atlantic versus Butler is involving Iowa State and VCU, with VCU being between a 10.5 to an 11-point line, with Iowa State being the favorite at a total about 131. What do you make out of a matchup like this? Because I know that you don't like playing big numbers with regards to these tournaments, and I have some hesitation as well, but I have been thoroughly impressed by this Iowa State team, and it does feel like a VCU bunch that's just out of sorts with Sean Bairstow being out the fold.
Yeah, out of sorts, and just a different situation with a new coach, and they're trying to adjust. They've been very up and down, helter-skelter. I thought the easiest bet, Greg, I had so far this season was the Grambling State team total under against Iowa State. I think it was like 52 points, something like that. They only scored 37, had 14 at the half. Tamin Lipsey has really developed. He had a very bad game last year when they lost that horrific lead. I think it was Texas Tech. They gave it back. Texas Tech had a struggle last year, but they came back with that colossal comeback against Iowa State. He was a freshman then, but he's different now. He's a sophomore. He's playing well. He's making it from 3, and their defense is at a different level. I have a future on them on Iowa State. I love them here, and I'm not going to be scared off because I believe in their style, believe in their defense. Greg, the Cyclones under TJ Alselberger are holding opponents to 33.3% from inside the arc. What does that even mean? I believe in this defense. I believe in their style, and VCU just not ready for this matchup here. Even on a neutral court with the game being in Florida, I like Iowa State.
Yep, I do as well. I've been so impressed by this Iowa State defense. Granted, it has not been necessarily against the world's greatest competition, but that said, I do think that they're going to be able to hold up, and I think that they're in for a big one here. As joining me on the show, we do have Mike Randle of FTM Bets. He does amazing work over there, along with the Screener podcast. You're going to be right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and I am very intrigued by this matchup as well. Right now, NC State is between a 7 to an 8-point favorite against a Vanderbilt team that they just had a bunch of injuries to begin the season that nobody knew about. We have yet to see Tyron Lawrence. We have yet to see Lee Jordan and a few others for this Vanderbilt team. But I take a look at this total at 142.5 to 143, and it just feels low to me. This Vanderbilt team has not been good on defense really over the last year plus, and for this NC State team, I really like the way that they're taking care of the ball right now.
Yeah, and you can't go wrong with hitting an over on Ezra Manjon. He is a blur there for Vanderbilt. He has to push the ball, get up and down the floor. Jerry Stackhouse really been fair at the loss to Presbyterian in the first game of the season. But NC State certainly has no problem playing at that breakneck pace. They're going to get up and down the floor as well. It's a neutral court, which is always questionable. But as you and I mentioned the last time we talked, some of these totals seem skewed to the under, which allows for opportunity. I do think this stays as a close game, which brings the fouling game into trouble, into a possibility late in the game. So, yeah, I am with you there, especially with Vanderbilt, who's going to want to push the pace. They don't have their full cadre of players. They want to get up and down the floor. They don't want to play slow. That's not what Jerry Stackhouse is going to do. So I'm with you there. NC State can certainly shoot the lights out, and people are nervous about taking overs, especially on neutral court. Not in this matchup here. I think Mangione gets it going, and I think you should get to the over.
Yep, I do think so as well. I think that that's a total that's set just a little bit too low. And then really what is going to be the marquee game that we're going to be seeing on Thanksgiving, it is Michigan State versus Arizona. Nice little one-off game where you've got Arizona is between a 4.5 to a 5-point favorite, total between 145.5 and 146. And I want to talk about a team that has very much impressed me. Look no further than Arizona. But that said, with this Michigan State team, they got off to just that so cold 3-point shooting start to the season. I do think that there's going to be some positive regression doing for them a little bit here. How do you evaluate this game? Because with Arizona, I do think that they should be able to outclass Michigan State, but I do think that there is some positivity coming for this Michigan State offense as well.
Yeah, I'm sticking to my priors here, Greg. I really like Michigan State. Last year they were a tremendous 3-point shooting team, 39.3% from 3-point range, third best in the country, and they have been really, really cold. I think they get right. I think the regression is starting to come. They look good. I know it was Alcorn State, but they were able to go 10 to 25 from 3-point range, 3 for Jaden Akins, 5 of 5. Trey Hollerman hit 5 as well. So I think the regression is coming. I think it's a perfect sell high spot on Arizona and a buy low spot on Michigan State. This game's at a neutral court here in Palm Springs, California. I like Michigan State in this matchup. I even don't mind them on the money line. I just think everybody's going to be on Arizona here.
Yep, I do think that we're getting a little bit of inflation as well. And for Michigan State, do they perhaps have a little bit of a glass ceiling on them with having a lot of guys that have just been around the block a little bit? Perhaps, but I certainly think that they're better than the team that we've seen here in the beginning part of the campaign. And when you have to play against the likes of Duke in the Champions Classic, that certainly does take quite a bit out of you. And for Arizona, that was an impressive win that they were able to have against Duke themselves. But I do think that we should see a little bit of a bounce back here from Michigan State as we're being joined by Mike Randle, does tremendous work over at FTN Network, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And with regards to everything else that we are seeing on Thursday, is there anything else that we're taking a look at? And truth be told, we are doing this as we've got a few TBD matchups in terms of the Battle for Atlantis, along with that, the Hall of Fame Classic out there in Kansas City, Missouri. But anything else you have your eye on, whether that be a game that you're going to be looking to bet or just a game in general that has piqued your fascination?
Yeah, a couple games. First, I don't believe in North Carolina. I don't think Hubert Davis has erased some of the issues and questions that hung around him last year just because they had a scalding hot 10 minutes against Northern Iowa. There's a bother to me that a team with Armando Bacot and all those big guys and Ingram inside can get down to Northern Iowa in the first half. I like Villanova in that matchup. I think the spread, Greg, is going to be about 1. If Villanova's an underdog, it's a money line play for me. The other one, too, is Oklahoma. Oklahoma's kind of flying under the radar here, and they play Iowa in this matchup. 4-0 with Porter Moser, great teacher of the game, great on defense. They're locking down from 3-point range. Here comes Iowa flying high. Their defense isn't going to be great, but they don't turn the ball over. I think that's a fascinating matchup also, kind of like Oklahoma and Porter Moser there as well. So looking at 2 games, big games between high-profile teams where I think the favorite may be a little bit overrated here. It's a great slate of games. I mean, North Carolina, Villanova, Michigan, Arizona, Oklahoma, Iowa. What else do we want here? Creighton with a lackluster first half today should be able to take care of Colorado State as well. But some great teams playing. That's what I'm looking at. Little underdog for Villanova, underdog for Oklahoma. I kind of like them. Well-coached, disciplined teams that play great defense.
Oh, I always love these well-coached teams, these teams that have a pedigree of always having success time and time again, and a man that always finds a way to have success. That would be you, Mike. You do an absolutely tremendous job over at FTN Network. I know that you do a tremendous job with the Screener podcast as well. So love to get people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along with all of your work on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, you can follow me on X at Randall Rand. We have so much stuff going on, FTN Fantasy, FTN Daily, and FTN Bets, of course. We have 40% off using promo code GRAVY. You can come in and get to us and get into our Discord. All the stuff. We're handicapping games constantly back and forth. I know you had, I think you had Mike Kutry on the pod recently. He's fantastic with the props. He's over 50 units up already. So great time here to join us with Thanksgiving and the holidays coming up.
Yes, sir. Mike did a tremendous job on this podcast a few days ago, just like Mr. Mike Randle did a tremendous job on the podcast today. Mike doing an absolutely incredible job taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. And every single time he joins this podcast, I feel like we get just a little bit smarter. So big thanks to Mike for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And coming up next, it is a Thanksgiving Day Thursday, and I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Thanksgiving Thursday as we hit some big shots. your lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to get Mike Randle aboard. He does tremendous work over at FTN. He is one of their main content officers. Taking a look at this great game of college basketball over at Screen, the Screener. I know that he does a tremendous job with regards to all of his handicapping all 12 months out of the year, and every single time he joins this podcast, I feel like we get just a little bit smarter. So, big thanks to Mike for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday, this Thanksgiving college basketball Thursday, as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at unit_D1. We are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is pretty much based on tip time with regards to all these tournaments. Like, the first one to tip off is going to be the Battle for Atlantis, and then the ESPN Invitational, the Hall of Fame Classic, and then we just go down the list with Michigan State versus Arizona being a little bit of a write-in game for some reason. So that is going to be a standalone that is going to be at the bottom. So let's get things started with 761, 762 on the betting board. It is Texas Tech, and they're going to be playing against Northern Iowa. This is a part of the Battle for Atlantis from the Bahamas, and with this game, there's currently no numbers up as I'm doing this podcast because both of these teams played yesterday, but that said, I do have my handicap. I set Texas Tech as a 9-point favorite and made my total a 131, so at a 130.5 or less, I'm going to be taking a look at the over. 131.5 or higher, going to be taking a look at the under. Just an out loud question. When is Northern Iowa going to realize that because they cranked up their tempo, they have all of a sudden become as useless as a poopy flavored lollipop? Like, when Northern Iowa was really good, they were playing super duper slow, and ever since they cranked up their tempo a few seasons ago, it's led to them being highly ineffective. So I have to wonder if they try to get back to basics in this game against Texas Tech. Texas Tech, under the tutelage of Grant McCasland, who was over at North Texas a season ago, they have played a very slow brand of basketball thus far this season. They're looking to hang their hat on tough defense, having someone like a Warren Washington, a 7-footer down low, has a big for this team. And then you've got Pop Isaacs, who's been able to do a solid job of just being that mixer and shaker for this team, being able to come in, give this team about 11 points per contest. Do love what he's able to bring to the table, and this is a Northern Iowa team that I think is going to be having a tough time matching up with the overall size that you've got on the Texas Tech side. You had Titan Anderson be able to do a solid job, logging about 9 or so rebounds per game for this team a season ago, but it's not like he necessarily has ideal size or strength. You've got Nate Heisey, who he was out for much of last season, very versatile player. He's able to give you double-figure amount of points, able to throw in there some rebounds, but Bowen Bourne has been dealing with injury thus far this season. He played yesterday. He had 7 points and 4 fouls, did not look very effective out there. And for Northern Iowa, they bring back a lot of just overall production and minutes from a season ago, but I just feel like this is a bad matchup in general, going up against a Texas Tech team that they're going to do a very rock-solid job guarding you off the bus. Had a tough time against Villanova yesterday, but I do think that they're going to be able to get online, especially with someone like Darian Williams, who at 6'6", does a little bit of everything, grab these 7 boards, will give you a double-figure amount of points. Joe Toussaint, good glue guy in the backcourt that has done a good job of being able to dole out the ball, and plus, they've got some good shooting coming off the bench with Chance McMillan coming over from Grand Canyon, where he was shooting 44% from 3 a season ago. So at a 130.5 or less, looking at the over. 131.5 or higher, going to be taking a look at the under. Now Texas Tech willing to lay up to 8.5 with them, 9.5 or more. I'm going to be taking a look at those points with Northern Iowa. 763, 764 on the betting board. This is another game that's off the board. It is between North Carolina and Villanova. With my handicap, I did set Villanova as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 1.5 with them, 2.5 or more. I'm going to be taking a look at the points with North Carolina. Then with regards to the total, set it at a 145. So 144.5 or less. I'm going to be taking a look at the over. 145.5 or higher. Going to be taking a look at the under. Now, the most dominant player in this game is going to be Armando Bacot. Armando Bacot is just able to give you nearly 15 rebounds per game. He has been able to do an absolutely impeccable job down low for North Carolina. The question becomes a backcourt. What are you going to be able to get out of a very versatile player like Harrison Ingram, who at 6'7", is able to dole out the ball. He's able to do a solid job with his 3-point shooting, but has never been able to tap into the full allotment of his potential. You've got R.J. Davis in the backcourt. He's been able to do a nice job being able to chip in there about 15 points per contest. And Seth Trimble, he had some nice games early on this season. He had 0 points yesterday, so I have to be wondering what he's going to be able to bring to the table for a team that brings in a lot of guys I don't think are great fits. Cormac Ryan, Ingram, who I mentioned before, Paxton Wojcik, these were guys that played at a little bit of a lower tempo of basketball, and now they go up against a Big East foe in Villanova that they know exactly what they are. Villanova does a nice job just controlling the game. They've been able to get much more defense ever since Justin Moore has been back in the fold. This dates back to the back half of the 2022-23 season, as Moore has been able to give you more than 15-plus points per contest. Now, I would like to see Eric Dixon be able to kick it up a little bit more. He last season was one of the top scorers for this team with about 15.5 points per contest going into the battle for Atlantis, which averaged just 8.5 points per contest, but had a very big game against Texas Tech. You have to wonder if that's exactly what he needed to get going last 2 seasons. At 6'8", has been able to shoot north of 40% from 3, and with Villanova, if they're in a tight game, you can feel good about them closing it out. They've led the country in free throw shooting each of the last 2 seasons, and going into yesterday, we're shooting 83.5%. The free throw line, they don't turn it over a lot with fewer than 10.5 turnovers per contest, with guys like Brandon Housen giving you some three-point shooting, Jordan Longino now being healthy, and you're able to couple all that with TJ Bamba being a nice go-to scorer along Tyler Burton. I do think that Villanova has the goods to get it done and get a little bit more of their tempo. North Carolina looking to run it and gun it. Villanova very much looking to play slow and control, but Villanova very efficient with that offense. So 144.5 or less, looking at the over 145.5 or higher. Going to be taking a look at the under end. With regards to Villanova, want to lay up to 1.5 with them, 2.5 or more. Going to be taking a look at the points with North Carolina. Now I'm going to need to project forward on these next two because 765, 766, and 767, 768 are games that are TBD at the time of this podcast, but you are essentially going to be getting the losers of the games that we saw in the back half of Wednesday for this event, which that means that it's going to be Michigan against Stanford and or Arkansas. And if it is Michigan versus Stanford, I would be setting Michigan as a 5.5 point favorite and a total of 147.5. Meanwhile, if they're going up against Arkansas, I would be setting Arkansas more in that realm of about a 3, maybe a 4 point favorite, depending upon how they look against Stanford. I can tell you right now, that game is midway through the second half. Arkansas is currently losing, and they don't look very good, so that might get shaded downward a little bit. But I mean, regardless of Stanford versus Arkansas, I'm feeling a total in the very high 140s, perhaps a 150 if you do get Arkansas, even though both Stanford and Arkansas in the game on Wednesday, they were as cold as ice. If you watch that game, you watch just a big, giant rock fest. But that said, with regards to Michigan, I do think that they are going to be able to bounce back from what we saw yesterday. The reason why they lost that game against Memphis was just all about turnovers, and they have been a little bit sloppy with the ball. They are turning the ball over darn near 15 times per contest, but you've got a lot of just size and versatility with this team. Olivier Kamwa has done a tremendous job of being able to elevate this offense. He's able to give you 6'9" size. He's able to pop a few threes, so I do like what he's able to bring to the table. And then you've got teach me how to Dougie McDaniel. He did a good job of being able to protect the ball. It was the other guys around him that had a little bit of a rough time with it, but he's been able to haul in there darn near 20 points per contest, has been a highly effective player in general. And then you take a look at the flip side, and I do think that they would match up a little bit better against Stanford, just because with Stanford, you just can't trust in this team and their coaching. I know that there's been some people a little bit off put by Michigan, but currently they are under the tutelage of Phil Martelli. He's a guy that knows what the heck he's doing, and for Jared Ass, well, he does not know what he's doing, unfortunately. You do have, for the Stanford team, Maximine Reynaud, who's been able to give you about 19 points per contest. Jared Bynum has done actually a really good job of doling out the ball. Going into this event, he had an assist-to-turnover ratio of an 8.5. Brandon Angel has good versatility. Meanwhile, if you get Arkansas, just all sorts of talent. It's just a question of whether or not they're able to put it all together, and it is almost like a Memphis 2.0, for lack of a better term, if they do get that matchup. So they'd be seeing a similar sort of team back-to-back days, because you do have Kaleef Battle, Tremont Mark, who have been able to combine for 31 points per contest entering into this event, because that's going to be going downward after what we saw yesterday. But both of these guys, they were shooting north of 38% from three-point range. Trayvon Brazil is a 6'10" combo player that's able to let it fly from three-point range. Devo Davis, certainly not a guy that's going to light you up from the outside, but he just makes winning plays right around like 9 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, a steal. So I do like what he's able to bring to the table, and just have all sorts of depth with this team. Like Jalen Graham is only seeing 10 or so minutes per contest for this Arkansas team, unlike any other team in college basketball. He would certainly be seeing a whole heck of a lot more minutes, so that is something that I take a look at. And with regard regards to what you're able to get a little bit further down the bench, like Chandler Lawson, he's only seeing like 10 minutes, but he's been able to see a few starts. Jeremiah Davenport, someone with versatility that's able to put the ball in the basket as well. So if you do get, say, a Michigan versus Arkansas game, that's a total where total would probably be right around about 149, 150 or so, with Arkansas in the neighborhood, about a 3 to a 3.5 point favorite. And then if you get Stanford versus Michigan, I'd be setting as a 5.5 point favorite, and a total to where 147 or less, we'll be looking at the over on 148 or higher. We'll be taking a look at the under. And then with regards to the Memphis versus Arkansas and or Stanford game, with Memphis, I would set them as a 2-point underdog against Arkansas. I'd be setting them as right around a 7-point favorite against Stanford. Once again, with the Stanford team, I really don't have any faith in them whatsoever. This is just a poorly coached team. Jared Ass has no idea what he's doing. Andrei Stojakovic for that Stanford team has been able to do a solid job lighting up from 3-point range. And as I am doing this podcast with the way that the results is going as of right now, I'm starting to think that it's looking a little bit more like you'd be getting that Memphis versus Stanford matchup, and that would be a total to where I would be setting my total right around about a 149 to a 150 or so against Arkansas, more like a 152 total, so I would be elevating that a little bit. But for Memphis, even though they don't necessarily have a lot of chemistry from a season ago, because got a lot of moving pieces in general, you've only got really 2 pieces that were able to give you production a season ago, and neither of them were really averaging north of 6 points per contest. You do have a Memphis team that has all sorts of ability. You bring in Javon Quinterly, he had a very solid career over at Alabama, was dealing with injury last season. 2 years ago, was averaging 15 points per contest, was able to dole out the ball. David Jones has already had triple-doubles throughout his career as well. I absolutely love what he's able to do for this team. Caleb Mills is just a guard that does a little bit of everything, and I remember Caleb Mills back at his time at Houston. He was a preseason American Conference Player of the Year, just was unable to live up to that billing in general, but all in all, I like his game as well. You're able to throw in there a little bit with like Nick Jourdain being able to show a little bit of range, hitting the 3 or 2 yesterday. Jonathan Pierre comes up from the non-Division I level. He's able to give the team as well, depth as well. This Memphis team is able to, if they really want to, go about 9, even 10 deep if they really wanted to. And I think that that's going to cause matchup issues regardless of if they get Arkansas or if they get Stanford. So if it is Arkansas versus Memphis, I'd be setting Arkansas. It's more around a 1.5 to a 2-point favorite with a total about 152 against Stanford. Stanford I'd be setting as about a 7-point underdog. That total being more in the neighborhood of about a 149. 769, 770 on the betting board. It is Penn State and Texas A&M doing battle, as we've got Texas A&M as a 6.5 to a 7-point favorite. This is from the great state of Florida for the ESPN Events Invitational, and total on this game in between 136 and 137. I did set my total at 139. I'm going to be looking at the over. Texas A&M, not necessarily a super up-tempo team, but they're going up against a Penn State team that they are much different than what they were a season ago. A season ago, they were under the tutelage of Micah Shrewsbury. They were a very lethal offense, but at the same time, they were a little bit of a limited offense in that they played really, really slow. They didn't have a lot down low. Now you bring in Mike Rhodes, and he comes over from VCU, brings in a lot of his talent from a season ago, like Ace Baldwin, a guy that throughout his career has been able to shoot darn near 40% from 3-point range. Does a good job of being able to generate some turnovers against the Texas A&M team that I do feel like they might be a little bit prone to turnovers. They've got a really good backcourt piece in Wade Taylor IV, who I think that he's a fringe All-American candidate. And for Texas A&M, just 7.5 turnovers thus far this season, but they had more like 12.5 at a mid-tempo pace a season ago. So I do have my question marks. You have a Texas A&M team that, let's call it what it is, they haven't necessarily played the world's greatest competition. Now with Texas A&M, they should be able to dominate down low. Henry Coleman last season was averaging right around 5.5 rebounds per game. He's up to 11 this season. I don't think he's going to quite average 11, but he's been very good for the team down low. Eli Lawrence is a good designated defender that comes in from Middle Tennessee. Last year in Middle Tennessee was a 12-point per game guy, but he's more lauded for his defense than anything else. Jace Carter has been a good fit from UIC. Now for A&M, you've got your big three in Taylor, Henry Coleman, and then Therese Radford. Gives you 15.5 points per contest. Past that, you haven't gotten a lot of scoring, but all these pieces work so well together on the defensive side of things. But I do think that Penn State is going to have some success being able to generate some turnovers. And with Penn State, what I think is going to be key for them holding in this game, Qudus Wahab, who has been able to give you 12 rebounds per contest, was at Georgetown to begin his career, and you could tell that Georgetown was just squandering his talents a little bit, and you've gotten a big-time surprise this far out of Kenay Cleary. Clary last season was glued to the bench for Penn State, really didn't give the team a luck fly. He has now become a 17.5 point per game scorer, and That's what this team has needed, was Zach Hicks coming over from Temple. You've been able to get nice production out of Jameel Brown as well, who was a little bit of an understudy a season ago as well. You've got some pretty solid depth with Penn State as well, and a Penn State team that is looking to crank it a little bit more up-tempo. Penn State shooting just 29.5% from three, but yet generating 77.5 points per contest because they are playing much faster than they did a season ago. Both of these teams have been pretty rock solid with their defense, with Texas A&M being very consistent, giving up approximately 66 points in each of their last 3 games. But I do think that this is going to be a game that is going to be warranting some late game fouling. I do think that Penn State is going to do a solid job of turning defense into offense to be able to keep them in this game. So I did set my total at 139. I'm going to be taking a look at the over. Texas A&M going to make them a 5-point favorite. So we'll take the 6.5 to 7 with Penn State and going to be diving in on this total over 771, 772 on the betting board. It is Florida Atlantic, and they play against Butler. Also out there in Florida, and Florida Atlantic is a 4.5 to a 5-point favorite. Your total is between 139 and 140, and with Florida Atlantic, set them as a 6.5-point favorite. I am going to be willing to lay this number with Florida Atlantic. They had that rough loss against Bryant, and cold shooting days happen, just like sometimes cold handicapping happens. I know all too well about that, but that's with Florida Atlantic. You still have just so much of that core from a season ago, which I do feel like they came into the season a skoge a bit overrated, but at the same time, I do think that they're going to be able to figure it out. They're a very well-coached team, and I do think that Vladislav Golden is going to be able to have a nice impact down low, has been able to do a good job of being a rim protector this year with multiple blocks per contest, 15 points, 6.5 boards. Love what he's been able to bring to the table, and then you just have a lot of unselfishness with this Florida Atlantic team as they bring back pretty much 8 out of their top 9 scorers from the season ago, and all of their top 4 scorers from the season ago, all of whom are back, average at least 4.3 rebounds per game. So they do a good job rebounding by committee, and this is a little bit of a chameleon in that if you want to play fast, they'll play fast. If you want to play slow, they'll play slow. And Butler, they have been cranking up their tempo a little bit more. They've been able to get quite a bit of production out of Pierre Brooks. Comes over from Michigan State, where he was a little bit of an afterthought. He's been able to log about 13.5 points per contest. Nice 6'6" combo player, helping out a Butler team that had a tough time on offense a season ago. Feels like their 3-point shooting and their overall floor space shooting is a little bit better. And just getting Poch Alexander away from Andre Curbelo, I think, is a good thing, because throughout his career, he was averaging multiple steals per contest. He's always been a very rock-solid player on the defensive side of things. That he's not going to shoot it well from 3-point range. We all know that, but at the same time, he's going to be able to do a solid job being able to get the ball to the rim, being able to get other guys involved, and he has been able to do that thus far with this Butler team. But I do think that Butler's going to have a little bit of a tough time down low. You've only got one guy giving you 5 rebounds per game, and that would be Jalen Thomas, who, he was a solid player over at Georgia State, but I think that Florida Atlantic could be able to win that battle. Florida Atlantic, they do a good job of being able to dish out the ball by committee. Brian Greenlee has been able to do a solid job of dishing it out. So I have a Florida Atlantic team as north of 8 deep, and I think that that's going to be a little bit too much for a Butler team that, sans that game against Michigan State, just has not been tested to this point. And for Florida Atlantic, I do think that they're going to be able to shake off the, shall we say, doldrum that they had against Bryant, as the defense actually looks better than ever. 62 points or fewer surrendered in each out of their first 3 games. So it's a good old situation if something's got to give. I set my total at 136.5, diving in on the under. I think we get a defense-oriented game with Florida Atlantic, especially with this being in the great state of Florida. Made them a 6.5-point favorite. So laying out with Florida Atlantic and diving in on the under. 773, 774 on the betting board. VCU and Iowa State do battle from Florida, as VCU is a underdog of 10.5 to 11 points. Totals between 130 and 131. I did set my total at a 133.5. I'm going to be looking at the over with Iowa State. This team is one of the best defensive teams in all of college basketball. Last year, they were so good at being able to take the ball away. Thus far this season, they've been able to do that as well. You do want to see this team in a little bit more of a step-up game, because what it is for this Iowa State squad. They have played against Grambling, Idaho State, Lindenwood, and UW Green Bay, not necessarily monsters of the Midway. That said, they're allowing fewer than 46 points per game, and Milan Masilovic, he comes in from the state of Wisconsin, and he has been tremendous, shooting 60% from 3 as a 6'8" combo freshman. Certainly, I do think that we're going to see a little bit of a fall off there, but with VCU, they were really banking on Mr. Sean Bairstow coming in, being able to give the team some offense, as you saw Ryan Odom take over the job from Utah State, brought Bairstow with him. Him being out of the fold has really caused the team to be out of sorts, shooting 28% from 3, nearly 15 turnovers per game. I think that that's a little bit of doomsday in this scenario. Now, I like what Max Shulga is able able to bring to the table. You can be a little bit hot and cold, but shooting 43.5% from three, 13.5 points, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists, held single digits in its last 2 games. I think that it'll be able to bust out a little bit more here, and quite frankly, they're going to need him to, because you just don't know what you're going to be able to get moving forward out of someone like Jason Nelson, who transferred in from Richmond, where he's averaging like 11 to 12 points per contest. Alfonso Billups III, he's coming as a freshman, 6'7" combo player, has been able to do a solid job after he was glued to the bench a season ago, but I do think that for Iowa State, all their depth, Taman Lipsby being one of the best point guards in the country, and now being a little bit more of a scorer after he did pretty much everything aside from put the biscuit in the basket a season ago. Do think that Iowa State falls off a little bit from their 39.5% three-point shooting, but this is clearly a very much improved offensive team with Misilevic coming into the fold. Even without Caleb Grill, this team is still very good defensively, and like the contributions you've gotten out of Curtis Jones as well, has come in from Buffalo, where he was a primary scorer for them, and he's been able to give the team right around 10 points per contest. Set Iowa State as an 11.5 point favorite. Willing to lay up to 11 with them, and set my total 133.5. So also going to be taking a look at the over. 775, 776 on the betting board. It is Virginia Tech and Boise State doing battle from Florida. You've got Virginia Tech as a 1 to a 2 point favorite, and your total as a between 142.5 and 143. I did set Boise State as an underdog of 3 points. So here at the 2, which is pretty much a market-wide number, I am going to be willing to lay it with Virginia Tech. With Virginia Tech had some question marks down low with this team because they lost Justin Mutz a season ago, and there's still some answers I do need with this team, but Lynn Kidd has been very good down low for this Virginia Tech team. Not necessarily going to go out there and pop a bunch of threes or anything like that, but logging 17.5 points, 10 boards. He's been able to do a really good job of just cleaning up the glass in general and being a nice offensive force, despite the fact that he's not going to go out there and shoot threes. You've got plenty of three-point shooting on this Virginia Tech team, as Hunter Couture, Tyler Nickel are both shooting north of 45% from three. Should see a little bit of Coolidge there, but you've got to love the efficiency of Sean Padula. Last season was a nice double-figure scorer that shot it well from three. He's doing that once again and giving out 5.5 assists, a 1.5 turnovers per contest. Depth is a little bit of an issue for this team. You'd like to see someone like a Robbie Barron, who comes in from Northwestern, be able to give you just a little bit more than 4.5 points per contest, but I do think that some of these guys are going to be able to come along for the ride, and depth is a big issue for Boise State as well. You love what Tyson Dagenhart is able to bring to the table. Someone who at 6'8" is a very nice three-point shooter that's able to give you some good rebounding. And then Chibuzo Abo, he comes back from season ago where he was a 40% three-point shooter. But question mark is, how does Omar Stanley fit in with this offense after he spent the last 2 seasons as a solid player over at St. John's? He shot 45.5% from three-point range a season ago. It does feel like he's a little bit of a fish out of water with the team, and you can tell that their main facilitator, Marcus Shaver, is very much lost, as well as they've been having to utilize a little bit of a 6'9" point forward and Cam Martin to be able to dole out the ball. It's been solid, right around 10 points, 8 boards, 3.5 assists. Comes in from Kansas, where he was just a little bit of an afterthought for them, but you're just not necessarily getting a lot out of like Robbie Anderson III, which I think that this Boise State team just horribly needs, and I think that Virginia Tech, just with having more scoring options, does get it done in this spot. So I did set Virginia Tech as a 3-point favorite. I am going to be willing to lay up to 2.5 with them, and with regards to this total, with it sitting here at 142.5 to 143.5, going to be diving under. Even though Virginia Tech has been very efficient with their offense, they are still a low, slow, and controlled team, and Boise State always prides themselves on defense. So diving in on the under, and I'm going to be looking to lay it with Virginia Tech. We have to go without numbers on these 2 games, but let's dive in with the Hall of Fame Classic out there in Missouri. This is 777, 778 on the betting board. Loyola Chicago is going to be playing against Boston College. This is a game where I did set Boston College as a 3-point favorite, and in terms of this total, it's a situation where at a 139 or less, I'm going to be taking a look at the over, and a 140 or higher to the under. I set my total at a 139.5. You've got Quentin Post, who's doing absolutely amazing work for this Boston College team. He has been a 7-footer that has been able to go out there, been able to go bombs away from 3-point range. This guy is just absolutely spectacular. And then you take a look at what is around him, and it's really not a ton, though. I do like the fact that they brought in Claudel Harris. He was over at Charleston Southern. He's been a relatively surprising up transfer. He's been able to come in. He's been able to give this team a double-figure amount of points. So he has been relatively effective. And you want to know what has not been effective? Loyola Chicago as a whole, as this team last year was so bad against the spread just because they were unable to take care of the ball, and that is manifesting itself once again this season. They have been having Desmond Watson do a solid job in the backcourt, giving the team north of 15 points per contest, but overall, got a Loyola Chicago team that they're playing faster than they used to under Porter Moser, but it's not like they're a blazer, but 14 turnovers per contest. They have been dealing with a few ailments, as Philip Paulson, he missed the game against Creighton, and that is taken into account in this game as well. He was logging about 10.5 points per contest this season, and a season ago, he was really the top scorer, but I do think that you should be able to get a little bit more out of Greg Dolan moving forward. He's been able to average 8 points per game. Last season at Cornell, shot over 40% from three-point range, and this team has depth. I just don't know if it's necessarily good depth. Patrick Mwamba was over at Oral Roberts a season ago, double-figure scorer, had some pretty solid size, was able to shoot about 40% from three-point range. Someone like Tom Welsh has been able to give you about 5 points, 4 boards, was a part-time starter last season, and at 6'8", he's able to pop threes. He doesn't necessarily pop them very well, and for Boston College, pass post, you don't necessarily have a ton aside from Jaden Zachary, Wacky Zachy. He's been able to do a solid job of being able to put in there in the neighborhood about 13 to 14 points per contest. Still remember 2 years ago when he shot just below 50% from three-point range. Certainly has had a fall off there. Question becomes, what are you going to be able to get out of guys like Mason Madsen and company? And I do think that's going to be just enough for Boston College to get it done, with Post currently averaging a double-double. I just don't think that Loyola Chicago, with guys like Miles Rubin down low, are going to have enough size to be able to body him up. So this is a spot where at a 139 or less, I'm looking at the over. 140 or higher, I'm going to be taking a look at the under. And with Boston College, willing to lay up to 2.5 with them. 3 or more, I am going to be willing to take the points with Loyola Chicago. I should say 3.5 or more. Willing to take the points with Loyola Chicago as I set my number over at 3. And then 779, 780 on the betting board. It is Creighton, and they're going to be going up against Colorado State once again. Game that is presently off the board because that is a game that went final yesterday. But I take a look at this Creighton team, and I'm highly impressed by them. I did make this line 12.5 with them. So at 12 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay with Creighton. 13 or more, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Colorado State. And in terms of this total, I had to set it pretty darn high. I had to make a total of 154.5. At 154 or less, looking at the over. 155 or higher, going to be taking a look at the under with Colorado State. Lots of offensive firepower with this team. Also with this Colorado State team, not a lot of defensive firepower with this bunch. Now, what I think is interesting about Colorado is that they aren't necessarily a super duper up-tempo team. The Rams last year were well outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game, but you've got Isaiah Stevens. He's one of the best guards in all of college basketball. He's a career north of 37% three-point shooter that has an assist-to-turnover ratio that's above 3. He does such a nice job getting other guys involved, while he himself has been able to do a tremendous job of also being a primary scorer with about 16 to 17 points per contest entering into this tournament. But you've also got Joel Scott. Joel Scott was one of the best non-Division I players out there. He was over at Black Hills State, where he just absolutely tore it up a season ago, and he has been tremendous. And Colorado State has really done a good job with their non-Division I pipeline. That's where they got Patrick Cartier, who's been able to give the team a double-figure amount of points per game. Now, with Patrick Cartier, he needs to work on the rebounding. He's like 6'8" and doesn't give you much more than about 3 or so rebounds per contest, so that's been a little bit of an issue. But all in all, I do like what you're able to get out of both of these guys. As Scott getting back to him, he's been able to give you about 17 points, 6 boards, few assists, a block, a steal per contest. So I do think that he's going to continue to elevate and ascend. And Nikwe Clifford coming over from Colorado was a big get for the team as well. But you do take a look at Creighton, and they just have 2 of everything. They are Noah's Ark, and they are a team that I've really had to adjust my handicap on, because I thought that Creighton was going to be good coming into the season, but I had that fear that they would try to be like the Restaurant 5 guys and have 5 guys, much like a season ago. But Isaac Trout has come over from Virginia. He has been a tremendous scorer, being able to chip in there about 7 to 8 points per contest. He entered into this tournament shooting 44% from three-point range. Baylor Shireman last season had like 15 points, was able to do a solid job with about 7 or so rebounds per game. But Trey Alexander, he has become that man. I mean, going into yesterday, 21 points, 7 boards, 6.5 assists, all while being able to shoot 38% from 3. Steve Ashworth hasn't necessarily lived up to his billing quite yet for the team, but you've got Fran Farabello, who's out getting minutes, who I just don't understand why they didn't play him a little bit more a season ago. But He's been able to see more minutes, and he's been highly effective. Fred King, he had to step in a little bit for Ryan Kalkbrenner a season ago. You could tell that experience did him a lot of good as well. So these guys are able to do a tremendous job down low, especially with Kalkbrenner being able to give you blocks. He's able to pop threes when he needs to as well. So I do think that Colorado State going to be a little bit overwhelmed. Creighton is not a team that they themselves necessarily cranks up the tempo as well. They're just really, really efficient, and if they ever have a guy that's tired out, you know what? They're able to replace him, as they were entering into yesterday right around 279th of the country in terms of total possessions per game. So did set my line to where I'm willing to lay up to 12 with Creighton, 13 or more going to be taking a look at the points with Colorado State, and then with my total 154 or less going to be taking a look at the over, 155 or higher going to be taking a look at the under. 781, 782 on the betting board. We head out to the great state of California. It's Oklahoma going up against Iowa. This is anywhere between a pick'em to Oklahoma being a 1-point favorite. Total on this game is anywhere between 158 and 159.5. Now, my total is low on this one. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. I set my total at a 148. I do think that it is very glaring what Iowa has done at home versus on the road the last few seasons. If you look at Iowa, they have scored 75 plus points in every one of their home games since the beginning of the 2022-23 season. Meanwhile, on the road, since the beginning of the 2022-23 season, they're averaging north of 20 points fewer per 100 possessions, and they're a bottom 40 team in terms of three-point shooting percentage. And I do think that that is going to be playing right into the hands of Oklahoma. Got an Oklahoma bunch that I think is doing a very solid job of just mixing and matching with a bunch of their transfers. Javion McCollum coming in from Siena has been able to do a solid job being able to give the team 12 points per contest. You've got a nice sharpshooter in Latrey Dothard, who has been able to shoot in the neighborhood about 40% for three after last season at Utah Valley. He was a guy that was able to chip in there 14 points per contest, and being able to get John Hughley back at full force is big as well. 2 seasons ago at Pittsburgh, this guy was very solid with nearly 15 points, 8 boards. He's been able to shore up the glass against an Iowa team that they have been able to get a lot of production out of. Ben Krikke, the transfer from Valparaiso, 20 points, 6.5 boards. Not necessarily a rock-solid, sturdy rebounder, though, and got an Iowa team that always finds themselves outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. We've had Pat McCatfree, Peyton Stanford both give you 14 points per contest. And while these guys have been able to do an okay job of rebounding thus far this season, I just don't know if they're going to be able to do the job against an Oklahoma team that has had quite a bit of good versatility, has been able to get a lot of production, and it is an Oklahoma team that is looking to play up-tempo a little bit more than a season ago, but as we know, under Porter Moser, you just take a look at what he did while he was over at Loyola Chicago. He always preaches being under control. This is more of a mid-tempo team, and with the way that Iowa just time and time again has struggled on the road to be able to put the ball in the basket, I am going to be taking a look at this total under. And when it comes to Oklahoma, I do think that gives them the edge in this game as well. Said Oklahoma is a 2-point favorite, willing to lay the 1/shake them as a pick 'em, and going to be diving in on the under. 783, 784 on the betting board. It is USC, and they're going to be playing at Seton Hall. Also out there in California, got USC as between a 3 to a 4-point favorite. Your total is anywhere between 141 and 141.5. And with USC, I did set them as a 5.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number with USC. I do think that this game being out there in the great state of California certainly going to be able to help them out. And when it comes to Seton Hall, they're just an interesting bunch in general that I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be willing to buy in on them, because they do have some relatively solid 3-point shooting. You've got Dre Davis, who last year was able to give you 10 points per contest, was able to shoot in that realm of about 40% from 3-point range. And what I also do think is very big for this bunch is that you've got Kadari Richmond, who just is so versatile. He's able to do a nice job being able to give you like 8 or 9 points, sometimes even a little bit more, and then he'll chip in there 5 rebounds, 4 assists. That's really nice, but what are you going to be able to get out of Jada Bediako down low? He comes in actually from the state in Santa Clara. He was a very solid like 6 to 7 rebound per guy a season ago. Elijah Hutchins-Everett, he comes in from Ossipee, and he's got a little bit of versatility with him, but I do have some real question marks with these guys. And then on the flip side for USC, Isaiah Collier is off with his shot a little bit. I recognize that he can get a little bit sloppy with the ball, but he is one of the best talents that you're going to find in all of college basketball. They have been dealing with some ailments, so that is certainly something to be mindful of. I know that Boogie Ellis has been dealing with an injury, so that is taken into account with regards to this line. Obviously, Bronny James is going to be out until further notice. You just hope that that kid is going to be able to resume a good and healthy life in general, because that was a very scary situation that happened there. But I do think that when it comes to this USC team, they do have quite a bit more down low, as they're a team that year in and year out, they typically rank in the top 10 nationally and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. I do think that that's going to be a little bit of an undoing for a Seton Hall team that has been able to do a very solid job with their defense. You know that Shaheem Holloway is going to be able to get into his guys with that regard. It is a Seton Hall team that also is going to be playing at a little bit of a slower tempo as well. They're right now 247th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. USC, they've been a little bit more sped up. I attribute that a little bit more to the competition that they played rather than anything else, but I did set my total at 143.5. I do think that when you've got what I handicap, which is pretty much like a, say, 5 or so point game, I set my line at 5.5. For the minute remaining, you get all those fouls that break out, and I do think that that is always an angle that you do want to be taking a look at, but that said, this is going to be a spot where I'm going to be taking a look at the over, set my total at 143.5, and I think the USC gets the job done. Willing to lay up to 5 with them. Now here comes my DK Network write-up pick, and man, I apologize about the last few. We're going to look to get online with this one. 785, 786 on the betting board. It is NC State playing against Vanderbilt. This is out here in lovely Las Vegas for the Vegas Showcase. NC State between a 7-2 and 8-point favorite. Totals anywhere between 142 and 143, and I set my total at a 147. My write-up is going to be on the over. Now, I recognize that Vanderbilt has been dealing with quite a few ailments to begin the season, as Tyron Lawrence has yet to take the floor, Lee Dort, you have yet to see Ben Allen Lubin, and quite frankly, I really don't think we're going to be seeing any of these guys in this game either, but it is certainly something that I'm taking a look at. And then for the NC State side, you've got most of your guys out there. I know that MJ Rice has been dealing a little bit with something this season, so we have not really been seeing him at all this year, but you know what, DJ Burns, he's been able to turn it up, down low, being able to give the team 15 points, 4 boards, and a big reason why I do like this total over is that you just had such an efficient NC State team that has been able to do the little things. They're shooting 77.8% the free throw line. That's a top 35 mark in all of college basketball. Their turnovers per possession in the top 20 in the country as well. As a matter of fact, they're in the top 8 in all of college basketball. 7.7 turnovers per game. They integrate Jaden Taylor into the backcourt along with DJ Turn It Up Horn. Both of these guys have been able to give you 13 points per contest, and this team is right now in the top 25 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Entered into Wednesday 22nd, might adjust by a slot or two based on the action from Wednesday, but reason why they're so high with regards to their efficiency is even though they're shooting about 31.5% from three-point range, they're able to punch the ball inside with someone like a Ben Middlebrooks who's giving you 6 points but shooting like 70% from the floor. Michael O'Connell has been a big reason why they've been able to do such a good job of being able to dish out the ball as well. He's been able to do a solid job being able to give up right in the neighborhood about 4 assists per contest, but if we do get north of 7, that is my buy point on Vanderbilt because I talk about the way that NC State is right now taking care of the ball. How about Vanderbilt and Ezra Manjon, what he's been able to do? He has been Mr. Do It All for this team. 19 points, 4 assists, 1.8 steals, nearly 5 boards per contest. If he's able to get someone like a Tazos Camateros to be able to become a little bit more of a volume scorer, comes in from South Dakota, he's been shooting right around about 50% from three-point range, should see a little bit of a fall-off, but he's a very versatile guy that has been able to do a nice job helping this team out along the perimeter at right around 6'9". Got Colin Smith, who's been able to give you 9.5 rebounds per game. That's been big, and for this Vanderbilt team, they are getting a rebound on about 35.5% of their missed shots. Now, a lot of this has been against lesser competition. I know that they've lost against Presbyterian, but them, USC, Upstate, teams like that, but I do think that Vanderbilt going to be able to generate second chances. I do think that with Ezra Manjon at the helm, this team is going to be able to stay lively in this game. So being able to get 7.5 to 8, I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Vanderbilt. But as we know with NC State, they are a team that typically they like to push tempo. They entered into this game right around 250th in terms of possessions per game. But I do think that that is going to be cranked up a little bit. And I do think that we're going to get plenty of scoring in this game. So 7 or more going to be taking the points with Vanderbilt, and my DK Network write-up pick, that is on this total over. 787, 788 on the betting board. It is BYU and Arizona State doing battle from lovely Las Vegas. Right now, BYU finds themselves as a favorite of between 8.5 and 9 points, and total on this game is anywhere between 140.5 and 141.5. I feel like this one is a little bit correlated. If you like the under, you probably like Arizona State. If you like the over, you probably like BYU, because Arizona State has actually done quite a good job with their defense. Like Alonzo Gaffney has been someone that doesn't really produce a lot of scoring for Arizona State, but is able to do a good job of being able to play some rock solid defense. As a matter of fact, for Arizona State, they are currently 313th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. BYU, meanwhile, they're number 5. Now, BYU's comes with a little bit of an asterisk. They had a very nice win against San Diego State, but they've also been playing against the likes of Houston Christian and company, so I do have to throw that in there. And I know that playing against UMass Lowell doesn't necessarily sound like the world's biggest competition, but that was a legitimately tough game for Arizona State. So I'm going to give a little bit of credit where credit is due. And then for Arizona State as well, you do have someone in Frankie Collins that does a good job of being able to get other guys involved. He's averaging 4.7 steals, 4 assists, 5.5 rebounds per game. Not necessarily the world's greatest shooter, but he's done everything else quite well for this team. You've been able to get right around 6 rebounds per game out of Sean Phillips Jr., the 7-footer who's come in and has been able to make a nice impact after last season. He was a bit of an afterthought at LSU. Right now, your top scorer is Kamari Lands, who he comes over from Louisville, where he was chipping in there about a 33% three-point shooting percentage, and he's been able to give the team right around 12 points, shot it well from distance, and you can tell that Jose Perez, he's still getting used to the system, but I do think that he's going to be more effective now than he was even just, say, a few short weeks ago. And for BYU, do like what they've got down low. You've pretty much got 4 different guys. They're giving you at least 5 rebounds per contest. Fusani Trayer has been able to do a nice job with 6 boards per contest. Noah Waterman, who at 6'11", is able to can threes at a 37.5% clip, 9 and 7 out of him as well. You've been able to have the backcourt pieces that are very veteran, like a Spencer Johnson, who's having a rough shooting season thus far this year, but last year shot 46% from 3. I don't think he's going to duplicate that, but 10 points, 6 assists, 5.5 rebounds per game. But once again, BYU just has not seen a defense like this other than, say, San Diego State. I do think that the San Diego State game is very big, but I do think that with playing Houston Christian, Southeast Louisiana, Morgan State, that's going to very much bolster your numbers just a little bit there, and Arizona State has played the tougher competition. I do think that Arizona State going to be able to get up in the grill of BYU. BYU has shown in the past that they can be a pretty solid defensive team as well. We saw that during the 2022-23 season, where they were actually a team that was one of those better defensive teams in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and to their own right as well. Granted, against lesser competition, BYU currently 4th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit more of a low scoring slog. Somebody told at 140.5, so out of 141, diving in on the under. I think that Arizona State's defense keeps them lively, except BYU is a 6.5 point favorite. So taking the points with Arizona State and the under, and we wrap things up with 789, 790 on the betting board. Michigan State is going to be playing against Arizona. This is from Acrisure Shore Arena. Hopefully I said the brand correct, but that said, you've got Arizona's between a 4.5 to a 5.5 point favorite. Your total anywhere between 145.5 and 147. And with Arizona, I did set them as a 5-point favorite. Here at a 4.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it in. Between a 4.5 and a 5.5, I would much rather lay 4.5 than take 5.5, because with Michigan State, they bring back so many guys from a season ago. I just question whether or not the guys that they brought back are necessarily going to be able to take those strides forward. I feel like that year 3 to year 4 bump isn't as big as that freshman to sophomore bump, and I think part of the reason why they're still in college is because they're not necessarily super amazing. I hate to be that guy, but you take a look at what you're able to get down low out of Manny Sissoko, and I've not been impressed. He's able to give you about 5 points, 6 boards per contest, but I think that your much better options are guys like Xavier Booker, Cohen Carr, who I think are able to elevate the team. AJ Hoggard does a nice job of being able to dish it on, and Michigan State is going to shoot when it's all said and done better than 26.5% from 3. Last year, they were a top 10 team in terms of 3-point shooting percentage. Matter of fact, I think they were a top 5 team in 3-point shooting percentage, but you look at this Arizona team, and I'm not even joking when I say this, every one of their top 7 scorers are logging at least 4 rebounds per game. It's absolutely ridiculous what they're able to get. Actually, I think it's each of their top 8. You've got just depth upon depth with this team, because we all talk about Kylan Boswell along with Caleb Love in the backcourt, and rightfully so. They're combining for about 26 points per contest, and Boswell shooting a ridiculous 68% from 3. Arizona shooting 41.5% from 3. That's going to be going southward. But you've got Umar Ballo who's able to do a nice job as a 7-footer down low. Matejus Krevisas, hopefully I said that correctly, the 7'2" gentleman, he's been able to give the team 12 points, 5.5 boards. You lose Azulo Sabelis from a season ago, but he's been a nice replacement for him. Not quite as much 3-point shooting ability, but still love what he's able to bring to the table. And then I thought that it was a good fit that they brought in Keshad Johnson, who's been able to run the floor very well. He has shown some offensive might. You know what he's able to do on the defensive side of things as well. for Michigan State. I think that they are going to have a tough time matching up, though. They might have the best overall pure scorer in this game in Ty Walker, because he has been the man for Michigan State. I mean, he's been able to chip in there 23 points per contest. Last 2 seasons at Michigan State, shot north of 41% from 3. That's down to 30% this season. I think that is going to be taking a little bit of a bump northward, but I think that Arizona just comes at Michigan State with a little bit too much, and it is a good old situation of something's got to give. Arizona is running it, gunning it, just absolutely ripping it down your throat. Meanwhile, Michigan State, they are not doing that. Michigan State is right around 175th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, while Arizona is number 8. But I do think that for Michigan State, they get a little bit warmer from 3-point range, and I do think that Arizona going to be playing very much an up and down game. Do keep in mind that this is at the AccuSure Arena, so this is a true neutral court game. It is a case where I'm going to be taking a look at the over. I did set my total at a 151, and with Arizona, going to be willing to lay up to 4.5. With them, like I said, would rather lay a 4.5 rather than take a 5.5, and that'll wrap things up for the Thanksgiving Thursday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops. Now a part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we all fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @unit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast by that 5-star review. Big thanks to Mike Randle. Does an absolutely incredible job taking a look at the game of college basketball. He joined me in the last segment, and I'll be coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, which means I am back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.